Hello friends, this topic 9, understand and apply risk management concept, is the 9th topic out of the 63 topics of CISSP. As a security professional, our main role is to manage the risk toward the business goal. So we need to understand what is the meaning of risk, what is the risk management, and also we must know the risk management principles, concepts and approaches toward risk management. And this topic of CISSP wants the same, means this topic is about understanding risk and the risk management process. Also the different standard for risk management you need to understand, right? Again, I want to say, do not go in depth of these standards, just have an understanding of the names and the purpose of this standard. So let's start with the meaning of the term risk. Risk is defined in different way in different standards. As per the ISO, risk is the effect of uncertainty on objectives, and as per FIPS, risk is the level of impact on organizational operation such as mission, function, image or reputation, and also on the organizational assets, individuals resulting from the operation of information system given the potential impact of a threat and the likelihood of that threat occurring. And as per ISC square, risk is the possibility of damage or harm and the likelihood that damage or harm will be realized. Now let's understand what is risk management frameworks. As a security professional, we must know that there are multiple frameworks to identify, evaluate risk. Also, we have some industry specific framework to meet our specific need. So we need to understand the role of a framework in risk management. Each framework helps in the assessment, control, monitoring and audit of information system in different ways, and to provide internal control to bring risk to an acceptable level. Whatever framework we use, our aim should be to effectively address risk in an organization. So when the governance body decide which risk management framework to use, they consider framework which is consistent, measurable, standard, comprehensive and modular. So for CISSP exam, you need to understand the broad characteristics of common risk management framework. Means do not go in depth in these standards, just have a overview, or we can say a bird eye view of this standard. So in this video, I will cover the overview of ISO 31000:2018, NIST Special Publication 800-37 Risk Management Framework, COSO, that is Committee of Sponsoring Organization, which provide a organization level view of risk management, and ITIL, that is IT Infrastructure Library Standard, COBIT and Risk IT, and also some industry specific risk framework we will cover like HITRUST, North America Electric Reliability Corporation Critical Infrastructure Protection Standard, PCI DSS, and in the last we will cover the risk assessment methodologies. So let's start with an overview of ISO 31000:2018. The ISO 31000 series of standard is about the principle for general risk management and provide a set of guidelines for risk management implementation. The ISO 31000:2018 standard of series is applicable to any organization regardless of the governance structure or industry. This ISO 31000:2018 standard helps in risk management process by addressing the design, implementation and maintenance of risk, and focus on a continuous process improvement model. ISO 31000:2018 is based on a set of 8 principles that drive the development of a risk framework. That framework in turn structure the process for implementing risk management. These 8 principles are proportionate, aligned, comprehensive, embedded, dynamic, best available information, inconclusive, continual improvement. To implement ISO 31000 standard, you can use the ISO 31004, that is risk management guidance for the implementation of ISO 31000. Also, you must understand that 31000 series only address general risk. Information security practices are addressed in the ISO 27000 series, and in this series we have the standard ISO 27005:2011, that is information technology security techniques, information security management. So this gives the detail and structure to the information security risk by defining context for information security risk decision making. ISO 27005 do not directly provide a risk assessment process. Rather, it provides input to and gets output from the risk assessment practice used by the organization. Next is NIST, National Institute of Standard and Technology Risk Management Framework, which provides a structured analytical process to identify, control, evaluate, and improve the organizational information security controls. The NIST Special Publication 800-37 document is a guide for applying the risk management framework. It gives 6-step process to manage the risk of operating information systems. Two standards are critical to the risk management framework: FIPS 199 and FIPS 200. FIPS 199 helps to categorize information system based on the potential impact on the loss of the CIA value. And FIPS 200 helps in setting a baseline set of control using the 17 security areas of control identified, and the details of each specific control is given in the NIST Special Publication 800-53, which is recommended security control for federal information systems. Once the system has been categorized and the baseline controls are selected, the controls must be implemented and monitored to ensure that they are implemented correctly. Also, they are operating as intended and producing the desired outcome with respect to meeting the security requirement for those systems. From this, we will get a set of the document certifying the technical application of the controls, and the organizational leadership then make a formal decision whether to authorize the use of the system or not. This decision is based on the ability of the controls to operate the system within the organizational risk tolerance zone. Finally, the organization will monitor the effectiveness of the controls over time against the security environment to ensure that the continued operation of the system take place within the organization risk tolerance zone. Now the next is COSO, which is a short form of Committee of Sponsoring Organization. This standard provides an organizational level view of risk management. This standard has framework called as Enterprise Risk Management, integrating with strategy and performance. As per this, the pursuit of any organizational objective acquires some level of risk, and good governance must accompany risk decisions on those. Based on the 5 components, the framework captured the responsibility of governance to provide risk oversight and set an appropriate tone for ethical and responsible conduct. The 3 objectives, operation, reporting, and compliance, are evaluated against 5 components: control environment, risk assessment, control activities, information and communication, and monitoring activities. The objective and component are further evaluated within the context of the organizational structure. Finally, we can say the system of internal control requires that each of these components be present and operate together to bring the risk of operation to an acceptable level. The COSO framework provides a high-level set of tools to establish consistency in the process of identification and management of risk to acceptable level. Next framework is ITIL, which is a short form of IT Infrastructure Library. ITIL emphasizes on continuous process improvement. ITIL provides a service management framework of which risk management is an integrated element. ITIL framework is organized into 5 volumes that define 26 processes. Volume 1 covers service strategy, Volume 2 is about service design, Volume 3 covers service transition, Volume 4 covers service operation, and Volume 5 covers continual service. ITIL does not directly address risk management as a separate process. However, the emphasis on continuous improvement, leveraging metrics to identify out of the specification activities and process to address information security management systems, availability, incident, and event management, clearly incorporate the concept of enterprise risk management process. If the goal of risk management is to reduce uncertainty, the ITIL framework emphasizes the importance of predictability in the process. Next standard is COBIT and Risk IT. COBIT framework differentiates processes into either governance of enterprise IT, 5 processes, or management of enterprise IT into 32 processes. Each process has a set of objectives, inputs, key activities, and output, measures to evaluate performance against the objective. Based on the ISACA COBIT IT governance framework, the Risk IT framework provides a structure for the identification, evaluation, and monitoring of information technology risk. This simplifies the integration of IT risk into the larger organizational enterprise risk management (ERM) activities. The framework consists of 3 domains: risk governance, risk evaluation, and risk response, each of which has 3 processes: The framework then details the key activities within each process and identifies organizational responsibilities, informational flow between processes, and process performance management activities. Additionally, detail on how to implement the framework and link it to other organizational management practice is contained in the Risk IT Practitioner Guide. Now let's have a view of the industry-specific risk framework. First is the Health Information Trust Alliance Common Security Framework, that is HITRUST. This framework addresses the overlapping regulatory environment in which many healthcare providers operate, taking into account both risk-based and compliance-based consideration. The HITRUST normalizes the many requirement file, providing an auditable framework for the evaluation of the security environment in healthcare industry. Next is the North American Electric Reliability Corporation Critical Infrastructure Protection. This particular standard is published as a set of standards designed to enforce good cybersecurity practice and provide an auditable framework for compliance. This framework has been influenced by the NIST standard, but is a standalone framework specific to the power industry. Next is the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. This standard is given by PCI Security Standard Council. PCI DSS standard define a set of minimum control to protect payment card transaction. Current version of the standard is 3.2. It identifies 6 goals with 12 high-level requirements that merchants need to meet. The level of compliance is dependent on the volume of transactions processed by the merchant. Failing to meet the requirement can result in fines by the credit card processor. The number of annual transactions for each service provider level. Service provider level 1, more than 6 million annual transactions. Service provider level 2, 1 to 6 million annual transactions. Service provider level 3, 20,000 to 1 million annual transactions. And service provider level 4, fewer than 20,000 annual transactions. Now let's understand the risk assessment methodologies. Many risk assessment methodologies are there. Some of them are specific to industry sectors such as government or software development. So we can say risk assessment is a formal determination of the likelihood and impact of an event relative to an asset. We can also say that risk assessment is a method of identifying, prioritizing the controls necessary to bring the risk to an acceptable level. The assessment process varies greatly depending on the framework, asset being protected, and desired output of the risk assessment process. One good document on risk assessment methodology is NIST 800-30, which is a guide for conducting risk assessment. As per NIST document, risk assessment is a 4-step process, and the first step in the 4-step process is to properly frame the risk. This requires some input like understanding of the organization risk tolerance, the scope of the assessment, any assumption or constraint that would affect the assessment, the organizational preferred method of risk response. All these are the inputs required. And other information to conduct the risk assessment process in the context of the organization practices is also required. The second step in the process is to conduct the assessment. 4 major activities will be performed in this particular step to evaluate the risk. First one is the enumeration of the threat to the system must be undertaken, taking into account all the threats, means, and motivation. The threats could be an actor or event, but their relevance to the system and the organization is an essential input to the subsequent prioritization of control activities. And the second part is identification of the vulnerabilities. So vulnerabilities are weaknesses that a threat could exploit. So identification and enumeration of potential vulnerabilities allow the organization to assess the severity. This leads to the identification of necessary predisposing condition which may affect the actual presentation of the vulnerability to the threat actor. The NIST process recognizes the relationship between the threats and the vulnerabilities. A single threat event might exploit multiple vulnerabilities, and a single vulnerability might be exploited by multiple threats. Regardless of the size, the complexity of the environment required that the risk assessment process be conducted across multiple levels, or we can say tiers, to address uncertainty at the organizational level, at the business and mission level, and even at the information system levels. Once the threat and the weaknesses are known, the likelihood and the impact of the threat actually exploiting the vulnerabilities are evaluated. Existing and planned countermeasures may affect the likelihood or impact, and thus affect the eventual determination of the level of the risk. Ultimately, in this step, the level of the risk is determined through the evaluation of the likelihood and consequences of a particular threat exploiting a specific vulnerability. The third step in the process is to effectively communicate to stakeholders throughout the risk assessment process. The fourth step in the process is to maintain the assessment. This includes monitoring the level of the risk based on the chances to the risk factor, threat sources, events, vulnerabilities, and any other condition. The capability and the intent of the advisory targeting the organizational operational assets or individual is also taken into consideration. And finally, communicating the changes in the risk appropriately to the organization is required. As a security professional, we should know multiple methodologies to shape the risk management processes so we can manage the unique requirement of the business of our organization. With this, I want to say that's what the topic 9, understand and apply risk management concept of CISSP, wants you to understand. Just as a piece of advice for this particular topic, do not go in depth in the standard. So keep watching for more such videos for individual topic videos of CISSP. Thank you, friends.